Good evening, everybody, and welcome once again to the Lepanto Institute's Anchor Team. I'm your host, Michael Hitchborn, and what a week. There's been a whole lot going on. We've done a whole lot here at the Lepanto Institute. I've got some great big news for you that I think you're going to be excited to hear. Anyway, the other thing, we've actually had a personal big week. My 11-year-old daughter, who just recently got out of a cast, is back in one because she recently broke her arm, her right arm this time, just below the shoulder. So she's been having a rough summer. So we're going to say two Hail Marys this evening, one just as our general opening, and the other for her because she's offering up her sufferings for priests and for certain individuals that she has been asked to pray for. So we're going to go ahead and say two Hail Marys. So, in nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen. Our Lady of Victory, pray for us. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the great big, really good news. Earlier this week, let me go back. When I went to the Napa Institute back at the end of July, I really didn't know why I was going. I was sent by a friend who said, "Hey, I've got a ticket. Do you want to go?" And I said, "I guess." I've never been. I don't know what to expect. So while I was there, I just kind of kept Our Lady at the front and said, "Okay, Mother, wherever you want me to go, I'll go. And whoever you want me to talk to, I'll talk to." And while I was there, I ran into a guy. His name is Alvaro, and he is the senior executive vice president of Food for the Poor. Now, Food for the Poor was an organization that we dinged on our charities report. We marked them unsafe because, for two reasons. One, because they had participated in the Association of United States Catholic Priests annual assembly. They actually paid to get a table there. And we reached out and said, "Hey, are you aware of what they're about?" And we never got a response. So we dinged them on that. And a lot of people had been writing to us and asking us, "Is Food for the Poor a safe organization?" And it took us a while because we kept looking through a lot of the stuff that was going on, and we saw some things that just kind of we weren't sure about. But then we finally discovered at one point that Food for the Poor had given gifts in kind to an HIV organization in Jamaica that was actively promoting condom use, and they were distributing condoms, and it was a pretty big deal for them. It was pretty much the big thing that they did. And again, we wrote to Food for the Poor and we said, "Guys, this isn't good. We're going to put a report on this. Can you explain this?" No response. So I didn't have anything that I could possibly do other than to produce the report and publish it and mark Food for the Poor as unsafe. Well, fast forward. While I was at the Napa Institute, and I met Alvaro, and he admitted to me that our reports on Food for the Poor had cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was a pretty big deal. We actually had a significant impact in people ceasing their donations. And he told me, because it was a great conversation. This guy, the senior executive vice president, he's a great guy. He said, "Look, I was at the AUSEP thing, and it was weird." He said, we were never going to go back anyway. I said, "Well, why didn't you write me back?" And he wasn't the one that got my email, but he couldn't explain why I didn't get a response. But he said it was weird and we would never go there again, just based on our experience alone. Because they were all gay and they're promoting horrible things. And he said, this is not good. We can't be a part of this. In regard to the the organization that they were working with, the one in Jamaica, at first he said, look, we work with all kinds of organizations. We weren't giving financial contributions. We were giving gifts in kind, which means we were giving things like cans of beans, bags of rice, antiretroviral drugs, and, just stuff that can help sustain the locals. And I said, okay, I mean, that's good. I said, but let me ask you this. Would you do the same thing with Planned Parenthood? And he said, no, we would never do that with Planned Parenthood. I said, well, okay. Planned Parenthood as an organization aborts children. But an organization that is promoting condom use and promiscuity is aborting souls, aren't they? So if you wouldn't give money to Planned Parenthood, how can you give money to an organization that is propagating ideas and ideologies that are going to ruin souls? And he looked at me and he said, I never really thought of it that way. He said, that's an incredibly good point. And he promised that he would look into it. Well, earlier he sent me an email, said that I've reached out to them, and I'll let you know. That was about a month ago. So earlier this week, I sent him an email and I said, hi, Alvaro, I just wanted to follow up on this email and see where things were. And he said, we've been in contact with Food for the Poor in Jamaica. And here's what the last time that we gave any kind of contributions was in 2020. Here's what we gave them. And he gave me an inventory list. And he said, and we are no longer going to have anything to do with this organization because of your report. So we're happy to announce that because of your input and because of your desire to basically keep people honest, and people make mistakes. Okay, Food for the Poor, it sounds to me like they just made an honest mistake. They hadn't really thought through the ramifications of giving to an organization that is tied to other things. But they are no longer associated with that group. We haven't seen any other organization that they've given to that seems to be out of the ordinary or bad. And so we are going to be putting them on our safe list, which is a huge win. It's a huge win. I'm very happy that we have been able to affect the right kind of change in an organization that actually does good things for poor people. So there we go. That's exactly where we stand with that, and I'm very happy to announce it. We'll be sending out an email to that effect. It'll be a fundraising appeal, but we'll be sending out an email to that effect next week. So that's the first thing I wanted to tell you. I was very excited to tell you this. The next thing I want to tell you about is that we have produced 3 reports on the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. 3 very detailed reports, not on the CCHD itself, but on its grantees. We are rolling out, I think I mentioned this to you last week, but we are rolling out the reports that we've been working on, since the very beginning of the year when we first discovered or first got CCHD to publish its latest grants list. And we've been scouring it. I mean, there are 218 different grantees, and investigating one takes days, like full days, to investigate just one of these. So when you look at how many days in a month there are 30 days in a month. And since March, April, May, June, July, August, September, that's 7 months. 7 times 3 is 200 and some odd. So we're mostly through the grants list. But again, going through and taking at least a day to find a group that's egregiously bad. I mean, if it's obvious and it's right there and it's in front of you, it only takes a day. Sometimes it takes a couple, maybe 3 days, depending upon how deep or embedded or hidden the real evil of the organization is. We get into their leadership, we get into the background of the organization. Anyway, it takes a long time. So we are now rolling out those grants. And I think last week I told you about Cincinnati Interfaith Workers Center, which is just an awful organization. This place is terrible. And I wanted to tell you about the 3 that we just produced reports on. And I'm going to share my screen so I can go over this with you, because I think it's important for you to see. And you guys are getting basically the first look of what is going to be out there, but it's nice to be able to go over it with you. So here is the first one. And let me make sure that you guys can see. I'm going to go ahead and put my inset there, and let me see if I can make this bigger. Let's see, how's that? Okay, I guess that's good enough. All right, so let's go through this. So Tompkins County Workers Center. The thing about what we discovered with this group is, well, first of all, I've been tracking this group since I was at American Life League back in 2008, 2009, all the way through 2014. Because I mean, this group, it's so embedded with socialism and Marxist stuff. I mean, it's so roped in with it. It's such an obviously bad organization. In our previous report, what we discovered right here, you can see TCWC, Tompkins County Workers Center, is a coalition partner with the Campaign for New York Health, which actively promotes and supports access to abortion. I'll show you some of that in a minute. TCWC directly endorses and promotes Planned Parenthood and certified it as a living wage employer in September 2016. I'll show you that too. I'll also show you how it actively promoted socialism on social media and how it is an affiliate member of Jobs with Justice, which is a terrible, terrible organization. It's basically a communist front group. And we highlighted the fact that CCHD is not supposed to be part of coalitions that do bad things. So we went over all of that. But here's the thing that I really wanted to show you. It's right here. Okay. As it happens, the diocesan contact for the Catholic Campaign for Human Development for the Diocese of Rochester is Lori Konwinski. On the USCCB's page listing all the diocesan contacts for the CCHD, and you can see it by clicking there, Konwinski is identified as the CCHD contact for the Diocese of Rochester, which means that the very first step of the grant application process goes to Konwinski. Whenever a grantee applies for a grant, they first go to the grants coordinator, which is the point of contact for the diocese. They submit the grant. The point of contact is supposed to have an interview with the grantee, have a site visit. They're supposed to go visit the site, get to know the people, come back, write their report, make a recommendation, yay or nay. And then that gets kicked upstairs to the national CCHD. National CCHD does something similar, except they don't do the site visit. And then they send their approval back down to the local grantee coordinator, which is Konwinski. She takes all of that to the local bishop, and the bishop then ostensibly rubber stamps. So CCHD says, oh, all the bishops approve these grantees. Yeah, they go by whatever information you give them, you numbskulls. So she takes that packet of information, gives it to the bishop, and the bishop says, looks good. Rubber stamp. Next. That's how it works. But she is the choke point. She's the point of contact. She's the one that controls the flow of information. She's the one that controls the flow of information, not only to the national CCHD, but also to the local bishop. So she's kind of the hub for the entire problem. Well, as it turns out, she has a long history of working with Tompkins County Workers Center. And the reason I discovered this is because of this. And I'm going to show you. Let me see if I can show it to you this way. Is it going to let me? It is not. Well, okay. So what you're seeing here is the top of an article on the Tompkins County Workers Center website. You can see here is the logo for the Tompkins County Workers Center, and here you see the logo for the Democratic Socialists of America. Bunch of commies. And they have this Labor Day online event. It's a virtual event. Normally, the Tompkins County Workers Center would partner with the DSA to have this annual picnic. Well, instead of having the annual picnic, this was 2020, remember, they decided to have an online event. And so they broadcast the event, and it was the Democratic Socialists of America that hosted that broadcast. According to the article, it says this year's event was a joint project pulled off by the combined efforts of Tompkins County Workers Center and the Ithaca chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America. In particular, David Foote, who is not only a DSA activist, but also a member of TWC, played a yeoman's role without which this broadcast could not have been possible. All right. So all of that takes place. It's a very long event. I think it's a 5 or 6 hour event. And I actually wound up kind of glossing my way through bits and parts of this. It's just some of this research is a slog, and you can see when you've got 6 hours of video that you have to sit through. Fortunately, you can actually speed up the video and kind of listen to it in the background, but it takes a while. And Lori Konwinski participated in this event. You can see lineup of speakers and times. Okay, David Foote, he introduced everything starting at 1 minute and 44 seconds. Pete Myers, he's actually the head of Tompkins County Workers Center. He's the founder of the Tompkins County Workers Center. Big time socialist. I'll go into him in a minute. David Foote identified as DSA. And, they've got Mother Jones stuff. She's a big time socialist. It's just full of socialism. And then you see Lori Konwinski of the Justice and Peace Ministry of Catholic Charities, as well as the organizer of the Labor Religion Coalition for Finger Lakes. That coalition is a brainchild of Pete Myers and Tompkins County Workers Center. So that's how they've been working together and why this is such a big deal. What we found is this newsletter from 2010, and it shows that, and this was the beginning of that, the Labor Religion Coalition of the Finger Lakes. There's an article in the Tompkins County Workers Center newsletter from the winter of 2010, and it talks about how they're going to have this 40-hour fast for, I can't remember what it was for, but anyway, they're holding that 40-hour fast, and Lori Konwinski of the Justice and Peace Ministry at Catholic Charities is the point of contact. So already integrated into TCWC. And then in the winter of 2013, TCWC recognized and thanked Konwinski for her role in the first ever TCWC annual giving campaign. What's interesting about this is that Tompkins County Workers Center was a regular, it was a regular grantee of the Catholic Campaign for Human Development for, 2007 all the way up to 2012. And then suddenly it drops off the radar right about the time that our big report on CCHD grantees came out. So what happens? 2013, and Konwinski decides she's going to start helping them with their annual giving campaign. So she's helping to fundraise for TCWC, despite the fact that it seems to have been put on the shelf from getting a grant from the CCHD. The next year, 2014, Konwinski wrote an article that actually appeared in the TCWC newsletter. The article is titled "Another Step Toward a Living Wage for All." So anyway, the point is that Lori Konwinski, the point of contact for the CCHD, has a very intimate relationship with the grantee. We call this typically a conflict of interest. She's got a working relationship with this group already. And now she's vetting the friends of, or vetting her own friends for a grant from the agency that she represents. So she can't possibly be objective. So all of this points to a conflict of interest. And then, of course, the rest of our report, we talk about how Pete Myers is a socialist. And I mean, you can just look at his, this is his Facebook likes. Now I consolidated the likes, you know, this isn't just a straight screenshot. I grabbed all, these are from his likes page. But I mean, look at this: U.S. Democratic Socialists, Socialist Front, Watertown Pride, Rochester IWW, in the Industrial Workers of the World is a socialist organization. They split from the International Socialists per se, but really only as a matter of approach instead of a matter of what they're trying to accomplish. The Red and Black Anarchists, he's all about the gay. You know, you can see the gay stuff. You've got the Labor Salon, which is a socialist rag. Anarchists for Bernie Sanders, the Open Society, and so on and so on. Friedrich Nietzsche, I mean, come on. So his, I mean, this organization here, they even have the hammer and sickle. Really? Anyway, he's as red as they come. On Facebook, he's pro-gay. You can see it there. He celebrated the SCOTUS ruling in favor of same-sex marriage. And the rest of this is just post after post after post where he is basically saying he's been a part of the Democratic Socialists of America. He supports the Democratic Socialists of America. He likes the Democratic Socialists of America. He's a socialist. The guy's a socialist. So Pete Myers, the founder and current head of Tompkins County Workers Center, is a socialist. So anyway, you can see it here. He's promoting Democratic Socialists. Here he is also promoting, he participated in the Democratic Socialists of America Labor Day Awards in 2017. He was one of the presenters, and he was representing the Democratic Socialists of America as well as the Tompkins County Workers Center when he did that. Here we've got him saying, "Go Ithaca DSA." He promoted this video which says that, well, America's already socialist, so I don't know what the conservatives are upset about. And it just goes on and on and on. So you can just see he's okay. He promotes the Marxist Eugene Debs, so he's all about the Democratic Socialists. He just continues to promote socialism. And then I also go through some of the later background, deeper background. So in 2007, he's promoting the Democratic Socialists of America. And it goes there and there and there. Well, okay. So it's not just him, though. The organization he represents is also promoting socialism. You've got, this is straight from the website of Tompkins County Workers Center, and they posted a video that was created by the Democratic Socialists of America. And you could have seen it here, but the video isn't available anymore. It's been, I guess it was something that was a flash file instead of, it didn't transfer over, and some of the updates that came through over the last 12 years. Here you've got Tompkins County Workers Center promoting the Employee Free Choice Act. Pete Myers actually was the host of this thing, and he introduced a guy named Marty Luster. Marty Luster was the chairman of the Democratic Socialists of Ithaca. So there he is introducing him, followed by Pete Myers representing Tompkins County Workers Center, etc. So then you've got Tompkins County Workers Center itself collaborating and promoting socialism. In 2018, they hosted the socialist political candidates. Now, they hosted these candidates in their building, in their office, as they were campaigning, which is contrary to grant guidelines. I'm sorry, guys, but it's also contrary to your 501c3 status. Howie Hawkins, a longtime member of the Socialist Party, will describe how socialism seeks to restructure how the economy operates. Okay, here we go. Eco-socialism, Tompkins County Workers Center, right there. So you see that they're promoting it and supporting it, hosting it. March of 2012, they headquartered the Ithaca DSA, had a big event there at the Workers Center. Okay, again, November 2012, they did the same thing. They co-sponsored an event with the Democratic Socialists of America. In 2018, they hosted the author of this book, Red Scare in the Green Mountains, which is all about communism in the Green Mountains and how they overcame the hysteria of the Red Scare and how they chased out the McCarthyites. So, again, here you go, Tompkins County Workers Center promoting members of the Communist Party, again, promoting Democratic Socialists of America, and it just goes on and on and on. All right. The organization also promoted Planned Parenthood. They called it they said that Planned Parenthood of the Southern Finger Lakes has a history of providing accessible, quality health care, honest education, and fearless advocacy. That doesn't sound like somebody who's critical of what they're doing, killing babies. The Tompkins County Workers Center is pleased to announce that this important community institution has earned certification. So they think that killing babies is important. That same year, they allowed Planned Parenthood to table at their annual picnic. So we found a news article that talks about the annual picnic hosted by Tompkins County Workers Center, and Planned Parenthood was there, tabling at the event. And then TCWC promoted a pro-Planned Parenthood rally on Twitter. We also have proof that they're pro-LGBT, and you can see that kind of stuff here and here. And then they worked to pass the New York Health Act, or they were part of the Campaign for New York Health Coalition, which we established, okay, that's what they're doing, and the New York Health Coalition is all about abortion rights. So, again, all of this, it's a very, very large report. We also went into its relationship with Jobs with Justice, which is a major pro-abortion Marxist organization. And the information just goes on and on and on and on and on. You can see why it takes so long to put these reports together. And anyway, we did send out a press release earlier this week, and we included all of the diocesan directors of the CCHD, as well as all of the staff of the CCHD, in sending this press release out. And we said, look, if you're going to, the problem here is that the person who is supposed to be making sure that grants aren't going to the bad guys is in bed with the bad guys. So you got a problem. Not a peep from any of them as to what they think about this or why it's okay what they're doing. It's just kind of interesting because they've been caught. They know they've been caught, and they're just hoping that by staying silent, they can get away with it as they have been. So that was the first report that we put out this week. That one took me part of last week and over the weekend, actually. I was working on it all weekend long, trying to get this thing done. And finally, I was able to produce it. I was going to send it out on Monday, but then Tatiana broke her arm. I did send it out on Tuesday, went out Tuesday morning. So that was the first report. Let me show you the next one. And this one's kind of interesting. This is another grantee that we have. Let me share screen again. And I'll do this one now. Share that. Okay, good. And let's, yep, okay, so it did it the same way. All right. So this one is called the Massachusetts Senior Action Council, MSAC. I mean, what a terrible name, right? They also are a longtime grantee of the Campaign for Human Development. You like our Saul Alinsky buck, CCHD, Saul Alinsky right there on the front. In Alinsky we trust. A lot of fun. Oh, and the USCCB logo here on the other side. Anyway, they're a longtime grantee of the CCHD. They've gotten almost $500,000 from the CCHD since 2007. And they continue to get grants from the CCHD. Just this year, or just this past year, they received a $75,000 grant. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. I could hire another full-time employee for $75,000. It would be nice to be able to get that kind of money. Well, so what we discovered is that MSAC, in a previous report, we found that they were a member of Mass Care, which was a coalition of advocates for birth control and reproductive health care. We found that they were a member of Community Works, which was kind of a, you pay in, they go out and they fundraise, and then they redistribute the pot among themselves kind of thing, almost like a March of Dimes type deal. So they're a member of Community Works, which has 33 groups that raise funds for pro-abortion and pro-homosexual organizations. Oh, and they're also a member of Massachusetts, the Marxist Jobs with Justice. They have a newsletter, and we went through their newsletters, and what we found right away was that they had a big spread in one of their newsletters for the LGBTQIA. I guess they got rid of the B. I don't know why they have the B over here. They were missing it there. Aging Project at Fenway Health. And this lady, D. Campbell Tompkins, says that she's a board member of the MSAC Metro North chapter. So she's actually part of MSAC. She says that she experienced or she was reflecting on her coming out back in 1983 as a lesbian. So she's already identifying as a lesbian. And she talks about why this community is so good, and that she's hoping that she says that it's good because it opens minds. What does that mean? That means it's a propaganda organization that is intended to change people's perspective regarding homosexuality. And then she talks about what she experienced through this particular project and how what does she hope to accomplish by presenting it to MSAC, members of MSAC. And she says that my hope is to make you more aware. You are able to make connections for yourselves and for your friends and relatives, and that you experience a greater degree of insight and empathy. What does insight and empathy mean? Other than changing your mind about homosexuality. So that was the first thing that we found. That newsletter, that was the fall of 2021. The spring of 2017, they promoted Planned Parenthood. They were talking about Trump care and who will be affected. And so they're all worried about how Trump was saying, hey, we have to repeal and replace Obamacare. Obamacare is a disaster. Even Democrats recognize it as a disaster, but they held on to it with clenched fists. And that snake, John McCain, was the last holdout, and he came out dying of cancer and all to put his foot down and vote in favor of retaining Obamacare. Otherwise, it would have failed. It would have been overturned. That rat. Anyway, so they were all concerned about, well, if Obamacare gets overturned and then Trump gets his new healthcare plan put into place, what's it going to do? And they were talking about how it would defund Planned Parenthood. Oh no. And then they say women under the American Health Care Act, Planned Parenthood is barred from using federal funds for family planning. Oh dear. And almost 400,000 women could lose access to preventative care. What does that mean? Contraception. And if Medicaid patients could not receive Planned Parenthood services, so what are Planned Parenthood services? Oh, abortion. So there they go. They're promoting Planned Parenthood, probably one of the most evil organizations on the planet. And then in the spring of 2021, they put out an article, and they were all concerned about how they wanted this Medicaid for All initiative to pass so that everyone has access to the care they need, including reproductive health. What does the elderly need reproductive health care for? Aren't they kind of beyond that? I mean, asking for a friend. So anyway, that's their own activity promoting stuff that is very definitely contrary to church teaching. They should be defunded on that alone. But this is the real kicker. I mean, this is bad. But they are a member of the Massachusetts Jobs with Justice. Remember, we wrote about their membership in Massachusetts Jobs with Justice back in 2012. Okay, that was 10 years ago. And MSAC has continued to receive funding from the CCHD, regardless of this, regardless of the fact that they have a grant guideline that says, hey, you can't receive funding if you're part of a coalition that has, as part of its operational agenda, things that contradict Catholic moral and social teaching. All right. Here we have Massachusetts Jobs with Justice, member organizations, MSAC. Not only is MSAC a member, they're on the board of directors. Okay? They are on the executive committee, which means they're part of the decision-making body of Massachusetts Jobs with Justice. John Ratliff, by the way, on his own bio, says that he's a longtime LGBT activist, so that's not a shock. There you see, John Ratliff. He's part of the executive committee of Massachusetts Senior Action Council, which means he's leadership for both Massachusetts Senior Action Council and Massachusetts Jobs with Justice. Kind of an interesting connection there. Again, reiterating that they can't be part of these kinds of coalitions. And just recently, I believe this was last year, Massachusetts Jobs with Justice put out a reproductive justice statement. And they talked about how they're proud that their organization organizes women and girls, and that they do so to address the real issues that working women and et cetera, and queer and trans women face. And they said very clearly, and they're speaking on behalf of all of Massachusetts Jobs with Justice. Okay. That's what really needs to be understood here. They're not just saying this is a statement for organizations part of Jobs with Justice that endorse and support this particular statement. No, they're speaking on behalf of all of the members. And the reason I can say that is that right in the very beginning, here in the preamble, it says, Massachusetts Jobs with Justice's executive committee is proud to share our statement on reproductive justice in recognition of our historic and current campaigns fighting for reproductive racial economic justice. All right. Remember, their executive committee created the statement. Who's on the committee? John Ratliff, who's on the executive committee of Senior Action Council. Gets even better. Because in the statement here, it says, we believe. Who's the we? They're speaking on behalf of Massachusetts Jobs with Justice. All members. We believe that reproductive justice is essential to end the exploitation and violence we face and live in our communities in peace. And what do they mean by that? Why, it's very clear. This is their full statement, by the way, and I highlighted parts in red, but they make very clear what they mean by reproductive justice. Working people all deserve equal access to safe abortion, affordable contraceptives, and comprehensive sex education, gender-affirming care, as well as freedom from sexual violence. What is gender-affirming care? Oh, sex change operations. So everybody has a right to decide that they're going to switch from male to female or female to male and have horrible body mutilations conducted at taxpayer expense in order to affirm their gender. They also say it has been almost 5 decades since Roe versus Wade, and our gains cannot stop there. We know and understand that the 1% not only aims to control our bodily autonomy, but our economic mobility. So what do they mean by that? bodily autonomy. That means, maintaining the integrity of their own body. I have the right to do what I want to my own body. That's what they say bodily autonomy is. I have the right to decide what happens to my own body. And they claim that the fetus, the baby growing in the womb, is their body, not the baby's body. And economic mobility, what does that mean? Well, if you have a baby, you can't work. And if you can't work, you can't get food, and et cetera, et cetera. And so as a result, we need to have abortion so that we can have the economic and also contraception. We need both of those things in order to maintain our ability to continue to go to work and to make money. So they want to have it all. They want to have their sexual freedom. They want to have their sexual license. And then they want to be able to do away with the consequences of their actions by murdering children in order to maintain economic mobility. We as Massachusetts Jobs with Justice, that includes MSAC, are committed to a future where reproductive rights and reproductive justice are not only a right, but are at their core, a way in which to create a world where this is not an issue that divides us as workers, but rather affirms our collective needs for care and embraces to meet the needs of all of us in a dignified way. So, we as Jobs with Justice want equal access to safe abortion, affordable contraception, comprehensive sex education, and gender-affirming care. And then they put together a slideshow where they say, this is what reproductive justice means. They also put out a statement as far back as 2011, where they were actually advertising for the National Network for Abortion Funds. Massachusetts Jobs with Justice. This is their ad. 2011. We put that out in 2011. CCHD continued to maintain a grant to an organization that's a member of Massachusetts Jobs with Justice. They don't care. Massachusetts Jobs with Justice. Promoting abortion, Planned Parenthood, promoting abortion, and it goes on and on and on. Okay, so the rest of it is about Massachusetts Jobs with Justice, but the bottom line is MSAC, as an organization, is actively promoting abortion. MSAC is promoting Planned Parenthood. MSAC is promoting reproductive health. MSAC is promoting LGBT stuff. This organization should never have been allowed a grant, and yet they continue to get one. And the last group I want to point out is a group called, it's a new one. They actually just got their first grant this past year, and it's called the Beloved Community Incubator. Now, this was a bit more of a complicated, a little bit more of a complex report, because as a relatively new organization, there isn't a whole lot on them. But I was able to learn about the background of the organization, how they got started, where they came from. And that background plays a major factor in who they are. Okay, here's the thing. So they get a grant for $50,000 from the CCHD, the first ever grant. Here's where they came from. They came from Luther Place, or it's a church called the Luther Place Memorial Church. It's part of the Evangelical Lutherans of America. All right, they're a Lutheran branch. They're a branch of the Lutheranism of Lutheranism. And so they get a grant from Luther Place in 2018 for $50,000. The 29th, let me go back. So BCI says on its history portion of the website that in 2016 they held these listening sessions after the presidential elections. What were those listening sessions about? Because they were upset about Trump. That's what it was. And so they started talking to people, trying to figure out what they could do to help the community. And they started talking about how they wanted to create an incubator for community owned initiatives. So like, what do they say? They say that it provides a talent space and catalyst for, oh, that's their relationship with Luther Place. The idea is that they're going to be creating these cooperatives, these local cooperatives. They're community owned and everybody gets to share in the profits, et cetera, et cetera. It's one of the typical models of socialists as they try to find some way to keep communism and socialism relevant in a free market, open market system. And it doesn't really work, but they do it anyway. Anyway, they that's the whole initiative. And so the incubator is to try and build these little co-ops that are going to go out into the community, and they're going to be all their cooperative happy selves. But they're socialists, and they're anyway. Here's why it's important where they came from. On an FAQ, they talked about how in 2018, the idea of an incubator organization was created at the church. And they said that while financially separate from the church, Luther Place provides talent space and catalyst for the project, while the incubator would provide soft relationship building for Luther Place. They actually had a what do you call it, a disclaimer that says increasing Sunday morning worship attendance is a welcome consequence, but not an intended benefit of this relationship, except that it was written right into their organizational chart. And it showed an arrow going in two different directions. We'll do this for them and they'll do this for us. Okay. So then in 2018, Luther Place gave a $50,000 grant for the launching of BCI. In 2019, BCI's bulletin listed Bianca Vasquez, she's the director of BCI, as one of Luther Place's staff members. So here you've got Luther Place staff, okay, right here, and Bianca Vasquez, BCI director. So she's on staff with Luther Place, but she's working for BCI. BCI is a separate financial entity, but it's housed. Actually, its address is Luther Place's address, which is odd. So anyway, it's a symbiotic relationship. Then we found more stuff to show that there's a lot of financial connections between BCI and Luther Place. And we also found that the same exact address, because the address for Luther Place is 1226 Vermont Northwest in Washington, D.C. And then you see that Metro Industrial Areas Foundation is also at that address, and so is DC Jobs with Justice. So there's a lot more going on here than just BCI. And when CCHD gives a grant to an organization like this, they're giving a grant to an organization that is intimately linked with a bunch of different groups that are all housed at the same location, and they seem to be sharing staff members. So there's something very strange going on here. Luther Place is pro-abortion and pro-LGBT. So we've got Luther Place here talking about support for abortion access and reproductive justice as a framework that centers themselves as a reminder that human rights transcends constitutional rights. We found a broadcast from 2021 where Luther Place was talking about the debate on Roe versus Wade, and then they pointed to the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America's 1991 statement on abortion, which then says, hey, we're pro-abortion. Oh, but they don't say that they're pro-abortion. They say we're not for restriction. We're not against abortion. We think that women should make a decision for themselves. It shouldn't be something where a woman just walks into a clinic and says she wants an abortion, but here are all the ways in which she can do that, and it's morally okay, which is basically any which way but Friday. And so that whole statement is right here. I'm not going to bother you with the stuff there. Luther Place is also pro-trans. They posted, this is nasty. They posted this in 2021 in recognition of Trans Week, where they did a read aloud with the Human Rights Campaign, which is pro same-sex marriage, of a children's book called Calvin. This book is about a young girl who announces to her parents that she's actually a boy, and then her parents take her out to buy boys' clothes and get a haircut to look like a boy. And then they spend the rest of the time, this loving family spends the rest of the time with their new son. And they call her Calvin instead of her former name. And then Luther Place says, we honor trans, non-binary, gender fluid people in every aspect of their sacredness. Anyway, and it just goes on and on. So Luther Place is awful. I reinforced the relationship between Luther Place and BCI, and then I go through BCI's leadership. First of all, BCI itself supported gender affirming surgery for somebody. They were trying to raise funds so that they could get time away to go have their gender affirming surgery. So that's pretty egregious. And then I went through their leadership and I started talking about who their leadership is. Here's Bianca, and she's all about the gay. She's all about homosexuality. She posted this, pro-abortion, pro-homosexual, again, pro-gay. This person, Megan Felix Macareg, I don't know how to pronounce that, goes by them, they. She calls herself non-binary. She likes these nasty things. I mean, anarchist dreams with queer satanic themes. Ugh. Rotten nymphette. I mean, all this Marxist stuff, this trans stuff. She posts about being non-binary and happy and proud. She posted this thing. It's pro-abortion because this is a photograph from a Poland women's riot when they banned abortion, and so this is a very pro-abortion post on her behalf. She's pro-trans, and this guy, Jeff Gilbert, their legal and technical assistance director, is promoting socialism on social media, and also, I got to fix this picture. Also, he promoted sex work. He's saying that, hey, sex workers are people too, and they need to have all this stuff. And by the way, they work hard, they pay taxes, and therefore they deserve $200 million. You can't make this stuff up. So those are three really big reports that it's been an exhausting week. I mean, Tuesday was all about doctor's appointments, and it was just kind of chaotic. But through the week, I was able to put together these three reports. We got them out. I'm going to continue to try and get 2 or 3 reports out every week leading up to November. Hopefully, as we put these reports together and we get everything gathered up, we can then submit a substantial amount of evidence regarding the Catholic Campaign for Human Development and say, hey, these guys are absolutely anti-Catholic. This organization is funding these anti-Catholic groups, and they don't care. They won't respond to people when they're asked about it. They won't respond to faithful Catholics who are upset about this. They give them the blow off saying, oh, we never fund groups that are against church teaching, and never address the evidence. So anyway, it's going to be a huge report. It will be hundreds of pages long. What I'm going to do is condense it down into a clickable list so that we have all of the various CCHD grantees lined up with the amount of money that they got that year and the cumulative amount of money that they have received since they started receiving grant money. So all of that will be laid out in this clickable list, and you can click on the name of the organization and that'll take you to the full report. So it's a huge effort. We're working hard to get this done. I know that I've been saying all summer long, we're working on it, but now you can kind of see why it takes so long to get these things done, to get it all gathered together. There's a lot of information. Just gathering the information is a huge effort. Then putting it into a workable narrative that people can easily grasp without having to read pages. You see all the images that I use. I use those images so that people can scan the text and not have to actually read the report. They can read it if they want. I mean, all the power to you. But all you really have to do is just scan through the images, and you can see for yourself just how outlandishly horrible these organizations are. So that's why we're doing it. We're trying to simplify it as well as we can while retaining the integrity and the detail that's necessary in putting these reports together. So that's all what we've been working on this week. And I've barely got time to go over the news articles that my wife so graciously collected for me this evening that I want to tell you about. And I'm going to go ahead and start telling you some of the things that is going on in the news. This is crazy. Now, some of you probably remember, I think it was last week. It was either let me get a drink. Hold on, I'm starting to I'm parched. It was either last week or the week before when when Colorado people in Colorado woke up to discover that they didn't have control over their thermostats because they got smart thermostats, and they signed an agreement with a company in Colorado, and I don't remember that. I think it was called Excel is the name of this energy company. And the agreement was that for a reduction in their energy bill, they allow the energy company to control their thermostat at times of great drain on the power grid. Now, why would there be such a great drain on the power grid? Oh, because of green energy. Because windmills don't produce the kind of electricity that hydro plants do, that coal plants do, that nuclear power plants do. And the commies have been railing against nuclear power, which is by far the cleanest form of energy out there. And it produces tons of electricity, massive amounts of electricity. And it does so almost in perpetuity, as long as the energy rods are there. And then what you got to do is you got to bury the rods. Big deal. Oh, but we're afraid of meltdowns. Do you know how many safety systems there are on nuclear power plants now? The meltdowns were primarily due to the commies. Even 3 Mile Island doesn't come even close to the lackluster approach that the commies had in Chernobyl. And that was an egregious system of, it was a failure because of communism. It wasn't even a failure because of the fail-safes that they had in place. It's because communists are so afraid of each other that they didn't communicate. And because they didn't communicate, they didn't get to the problem in time, and everything collapsed. So that's what a paranoid structure does for you. Anyway, because they rail against nuclear energy, and they rail against coal, and they rail against all these other energy producing companies, and they want to go green, well, guess what? When you go green, you go black, because you're going to get blackouts. You're just not going to produce the energy that you need. So now, in order to mitigate that, the energy companies are saying, hey, we'll knock off some of your energy bill if you allow us to adjust your thermostat. So they put in these smart thermostats. And so in Colorado, during a heat wave, some Coloradans were very, very, oh yeah, I do live near a nuclear power plant. Once a month, we hear the sirens go on by the lake. It's fun. The Coloradans couldn't adjust their thermostats. They were set, I think, at 89 degrees, 88 degrees, or something like that in the middle of a heat wave. So they couldn't cool their houses in the middle of a heat wave. And now they signed over this kind of control. But I'm guessing the fine print didn't really specify what kind of thermostat control was going to be handed over, or for how long, or whether they would be able to opt out or not. And by the way, the fine print did say that even though there was an ability to opt out of their thermostat control during the high drain energy grid times, in times of emergency, they couldn't opt out, and then they would shut down their thermostats during that period of time anyway. Well, that story was kind of big news about a week or two ago, and now Switzerland is saying that it may jail people who turned their heat above 66 degrees this winter. Here's what the article says. Citizens of Switzerland who dare to turn their thermostats above a balmy 19 degrees Celsius, that's 66 degrees Fahrenheit, over the winter. Remember, this is Switzerland. Switzerland gets really, really cold. Over the winter may instead find themselves shivering in a prison cell. The cost of natural gas has increased tenfold due to the Russian invasion of Ukraine and Russia cutting off access to the Nord Stream pipeline. I think you can see what happens when you hand control over to the government and to people regarding your use of energy. My wife has a note here. She said, green European countries with their Paris Agreement and other decisions to phase out total energy sources have already decided to keep nuclear power plants open, and Germany is firing up coal plants to generate electricity. Green energy countries, European countries, with their Paris agreements in place, have suddenly decided that, gosh, maybe it's more important for us to maintain the integrity of our people and to be able to help our people in these times instead of worrying so much about a non-crisis. It's stupid. Here's another one. DC mayor's plan to deal with illegal immigrants being bussed into cities into the DC city includes transporting them back out again. That's a great headline, isn't it? The DC mayor is now transporting illegal immigrants to what she calls the final destination. Now, I don't know what that means, but when I hear final destination, I have to wonder, is that her final solution to the problem of immigration? I mean, should we be talking in a Nazi accent? Is this how we should be talking now? I mean, Klaus Schwab's in charge. Here's from the article. On Thursday, DC Mayor Muriel Bowser declared a public emergency and announced a $10 million program to deal with thousands of illegal immigrants being bussed into her city by Texas and Arizona, which are being overwhelmed due to the Biden administration's open border policy. I think there's a saying, what's good for me but not for thee? I think that's how it goes. Good for me but not for thee. Isn't that usually how people from their high ivory towers looking down south toward those deplorables? You can deal with the border. Let these people in. You've got plenty of room. And then, of course, Texas and Arizona says, no, we don't. We have no place to put these people. We don't have the infrastructure to deal with this. You in Washington, D.C., and by the way, you sanctuary cities like San Francisco and San Diego and Chicago and New York and D.C., you all declared yourself sanctuary cities. So, well, here you go. Have at it. Because if you're a sanctuary city, obviously you've got the infrastructure to be able to deal with this. We don't. So that's what they're doing. They are shipping them up there. And into DC, they've already sent, I think the number is 9,400 illegal immigrants have been shipped to Washington, DC, which has caused Mayor Bowser to declare a state of emergency and immediately start transporting the influx of illegal aliens back out of DC to what she called their final destination. I mean, you can't make this up. They're so happy to push these policies until they have to deal with them, and then they suddenly have to make decisions and figure out, well, what are we going to do with these people? Oh, you mean having to deal with an issue and think it all the way through to the end means you have to make a decision and actually do something with these people? You can't just let somebody else handle it and say we're going to do this great thing and somebody else can take care of it and it'll happen because, magic is done with wands. Right. Now, the last thing I want to touch on, and this is a topic that I really didn't feel competent to talk about, but I had a number of you reach out and you asked, hey, can you mention stuff going on or the ramifications of the death of Queen Elizabeth? Queen Elizabeth was a complex person. Obviously, she considered herself the head of the Church of England, which she couldn't possibly be because there is no Church of England. She certainly wasn't on equal footing with the popes, which she considered herself to be. However, she also was the most conciliatory towards Catholics in the entire history of Protestant England, which, I'll take it. But one thing that I wanted to point out, so Catholic Vote put out an article that talked about how she had been very conciliatory towards Catholics, and Catholic News Agency had this to say, and I think that this is good. I'm just going to read you these couple of paragraphs. Queen Elizabeth presided over a period of English history in which Catholics gained greater acceptance in public life than many thought possible after the 15th century rift between the Crown and the Roman Catholic Church. The bloody dismemberment of the Catholic Church in England during the Tudor dynasty left British Catholics with targets on their backs. They suffered centuries of persecution, forbidden at various periods from holding Mass, serving in public life, or owning property. Anti-Catholic attitudes persisted in England through the 20th century and even into the 21st. The last of penal codes against Catholics were only repealed during Elizabeth's reign in the 1960s. As late as 2013, English royalty wishing to marry a Roman Catholic were required to renounce their places in line of royal succession. But now, actually, a Catholic can assume the throne at this point. In contrast to much of that history, Queen Elizabeth was radically conciliatory toward Catholicism, welcoming and commending Catholics for their contributions to Britain and to the world. Now, there's a whole lot of property that was stolen from the church and stolen from various religious orders that are now being used by British royalty and owned by British royalty and held on to and propagated by British royalty. That could be turned over, and, that would be great. Queen Elizabeth didn't do any of that, but she was conciliatory and open towards Catholics, which is something anyway. In terms of who she was as a person or her position or state in the world and anything else, to be honest, to be perfectly frank, I care about as much about the German royalty as I do, or the German royalty, the British royalty, as I do about Lithuanian leadership, or leadership in Ubongo, or leadership in China, or leadership in the South Pacific. It's a political leader of a country, and she was a very, very long ruling leader, so she had an awful lot of influence. She was on the throne, was it 70 years? Something like 70 years. I mean, that's a really long time. So her influence and her impact, they're huge, But and what is Charles going to do? Charles is a globalist. He already had influence, and by the way, the royalty isn't really running the show in England anyway. They're figureheads. They have influence. They have sway. They have what they call political capital. They have wealth. But in terms of political impact, they don't run the show. England is a monarchy in name only. It's a parliament, and it has a prime minister, and the parliament and the prime minister pretty much run everything. England itself, the queen, the king, whoever, not really much of an impact. So those are my thoughts. I'm not a royalty follower. I know that a lot of people are fascinated by royalty and they follow them around and are like, oh, royalty, royalty, royalty. I don't know. I have a very hard time really having much of a thought on that. I'd much rather pay attention to my local politics and figure out exactly who's trying to screw us over and in what way. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Not very helpful, I'm afraid, but there it is. So there we are. It's been a very long week. I think I'm going to go upstairs and have some dinner. And I hope that you all have a really good week and a good weekend. And then next week, I think, let's see, what's going on next week? Next week is the 16th. I don't think I'm going anywhere, so I hope that we'll have more to talk. I'm sure we'll have more to talk about, especially as the crisis in the church continues and as we release more stuff on the CCHD. So why don't we close with our prayer? In nomine Patris, et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum. Benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen. Our Lady of Victory, pray for us. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. All right. God bless you all. I will see you all next week. And Kate, I will definitely say hi to my wife on your behalf. God bless. Good night.